We'll do a review on Likutei Sichos. This is a Chelik Beis, and this is the second part of the Sicha for the Parshas Shelach. We know that in the end of the Parshas Shelach, it talks about the mitzvah of tzitzis. And the Rebbe is going to explain over here that tzitzis has to be hanging in a talus. You can't just take the mitzvah of tzitzis and take a pair of tzitzis. What is the purpose of tzitzis? It says so that you remember all the mitzvahs, the numerical value of tzitzis plus the strands and the knots equals 613. You remember the mitzvahs. But you can only remember the mitzvahs if the tzitzis are hanging from the talus, which means that something is beyond the seichel. That is when you can really remember to fulfill the mitzvahs and stick to the mitzvahs, not just to do the mitzvahs according to the rationale and the seichel. This also explains, the Rebbe explains in the other note that notwithstanding that we find ourselves in a world in which there is competition, and yet we do things according to Torah. We don't cheat people in our business. We don't lie. We do everything the way it's supposed to be because Anochi Ani Hashem Elokecha Asher Hotzi Sicha Eretz Mitzrayim. Eibishter dealt with us in a miraculous way. If we deal with Hashem and we do the mitzvah of tzitzis, we do it higher than the seichel, then we don't have to worry about the Eibishter provides for us in a way that is even higher than nature, as we will see. We're learning the Sichos the Nishmas Rav Levi Yitzchok ben Rabbi Chaim Tzvi Tei Nishmosu Tzuru Rabbi Tzuru Chaim. So Oizvov, states in Medrash, it states in the Medrash as Moshe Rabbeinu had gesagt zum Eibishter, that Moshe Rabbeinu said to Hashem, "Was is the Peula von dem, was du hast gegeben die in Torah mitzvahs? What is the benefit that you gave the Yidden Torah mitzvahs? Wie bald as sie gefinnen sich in Olam Haza Gashmi v'Achot, since they find themselves in this physical and materialistic world, können sie doch vergessen auf der ganze Sache, so they might forget on the entire matter of Torah mitzvahs. So what's the purpose?" Hat ihm der Eibishter geantwortet, der Eibishter answered him, ich will sie geben the mitzvah von Tzitzis. The Eibishter, I'll give the mitzvah tzitzis. Was durch them wollen sie gedenken alle mitzvahs. Through the mitzvah of tzitzis, they will remember all mitzvahs. So, warum? We see that specifically tzitzis has the ability to remind them. Why tzitzis? Warum? Because tzitzis betreft 600. The numerical value of the words tzitzis is 600. With the acht fedim and with the finif kishorim, if you add to it the 8 strands and the 5 knots, is dos tariag. So then it's 613. So you look at the tzitzis, you remember, you're not going to forget. B'meila the montasif alle mitzvahs. It therefore reminds them on all the mitzvahs we estate or the instant oiso zachartem is called mitzvahs havayim. And you remember, and you'll see them, so you'll remember all the mitzvahs of Hashem. So that's the point of the mitzvah of tzitzis, to remind us so that we don't forget about all the mitzvahs. But if the mitzvah of tzitzis reminds us because of the word tzitzis, because of the tzitzis, so why do we need a talus for? Why don't we just hold tzitzis? And that should remind us. Why do tzitzis come from a talus? When does the tzitzis remind us of all the mitzvahs? The tzitzis as they come from a talus. In Plug is aber nicht verstanden. It seems like this is not understood. Gebald as the Zach von tzitzis is Evder Mon the mitzvah, since the aspect of tzitzis is to remind about the mitzvahs, is to was that a talus. So what do we need a talus for altogether? The Rikin is of the tzitzis, The main thing is the tzitzis. What reminds us the 613 is the word tzitzis, is the tzitzis itself. They are what reminds us about the 600 mitzvahs. So you could have taken, the mitzvah could be to take just tzitzis. So why do we need a talus? So this tells us that when the tzitzis remind you of the 613 mitzvahs, is when it comes, when it hangs on a talus. Now, the pshat in them is, the meaning of this is, as talus is makif, talus surrounds you. Vorum es is doch nit kein mozen, was nimmt das rein in sich. It's not a food that the person takes it into his inside. But es is a levush, was es ringelt im Arayim. It's a garment that circles him on the outside. Und kann das nicht begreifen. That means he cannot comprehend it. It's around you. It's above you. So here is the idea. Darf man wissen, we need to know. As the Taryag mitzvahs und seine Merumes in Tzitzis. The 600 mitzvahs that are hinted in Tzitzis, kommen arish von Talus. They come from a Talus. Das heißt, von Azach, was is Hecher von Seichel. They come from something which is above, higher than their intellect. The mitzvahs come from a talus. When he would take tzitzis alone, on a talus, without a talus, it's not no mitzvah at all. And as the montim of garnish and doesn't remind them about anything. But on the tzitzis is hanging out up from talus. But when he takes the tzitzis as they're hanging from the talus, thus haste, what means the mitzvahs as a vase, he knows and he recognizes as the ganze Zach von Torah mitzvahs, that the entire matter of Torah and the mitzvahs kommt von a Zach, it comes from something was das in ganze nicht begreifen, that he cannot grasp it at all. The tzitzis come from a talus. The talus is over his head. That's the mitzvah's covered. That is not a mitzvah, then it's a mitzvah. So to remember mitzvahs doesn't mean just to remember the mitzvahs. Remember mitzvahs that they come from something which is higher than sin. And this is also connects to the end of the parsha, the Rebbe says in Isaiah, that the Eibishter deals with Yidden in the same way, in the way of higher than Seichel, just like Yidden of Phil remember the mitzvahs that they come higher from Seichel. And that's the connection why we say in the end of the Parsha Tzitzis, I am Hashem who's taking you out of Mitzrayim. What's the connection? To tell us that just like the taking out of Mitzrayim was a supernatural phenomenon to take all these Yidden out of Egypt when even one slave couldn't escape. That tells us that this is all a supernatural matter, and when we do mitzvahs in a supernatural matter, we raise ourselves above the norm nature, and we are successful even beyond the rational and the normal, so to speak, way. Zay, zum Soif Parshat Tzitzis stayed, in the end of the portion of Tzitzis it says, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, Asher Yitzei Eschem, Meretz Mitzrayim. I am Hashem that has taken out of Mitzrayim. What does this tell us? It tells us that a Yid does not go by nature. The mitzvahs, everything is tied to the talus, is higher than nature. You can sort of calculate as the derech HaTorah is a hepech of derech ha'olam, that the path of Torah is contrary to the path of the world. Memon by him as Lohit Shabbos und Yontif, we're demanding by him to keep Shabbos and Yontif. Umoisav zayin noch dazu mechalel HaKodesh, and on top of that to add from the weekday onto the holy. So extend the Shabbos even longer, Shabbos Yom longer. B'shas and hot concurrent. He has competitors, competition. He has competition. From Goyim, from Najus, Lahavdil, Eden, and also Yin, Lahavdil Yin also. Nitke Shemrei Shabbos, who do not keep the Shabbos. And Mon Ba'im, you expect of him when Mon Ba'im, as Öständig in the free, when he gets in the morning, so the Erste sagt Davne, first thing he should pray, und dann noch lernen Ashir, and after that he should learn a class. Und erst nachher, and only after that can gain in the business. He can go to his business. Und sein dich schön in business. This is all doesn't seem to fit the way of the world with the way of Torah that we're expecting of him. That's Zaindik, and even while he's already in the business, in his business, Montman by him is demanded by him as in mitten Tag in the middle of the day, Bishaz dem rechten Koch from business at the very full business, the dealings of the business, the passion, everything that's going on in the business. So when he's passionately involved in his business, so that else ablosen, he should drop it all und gehen daven mincha to go daven mincha. But das ist doch der Gödla Chavivus von mincha. This is actually the great specialty, the special time of prayer of mincha. We find that by Yohanovi said that he was answered by mincha because you have to tear yourself away in the very midst of the business day. And then what happens at nighttime? That he should daven and to read the Shema that you read before going to bed. On top of that, we're also demanding, these are the davenings and the learning, the classes, but as top of that, you're also demanding as Ozain Okid, stealing, robbing, cheating, Asagas Gavul, taking away somebody else's, infringing on somebody else's territory. This goes contrary of the ways of business. Business doesn't operate. Business, you do these things. So the question is, the path of Torah doesn't seem to go along with the path of the world with his business. How can he conduct himself according to Torah? If the time, this has no place in the world, that kind of conduct. Of them, Zokter in Seif Parashat Tzitzis. This is what he tells us in the end of Parshat Tzitzis. Was der Inyan von Tzitzis is Lamaila Metam Vadas Kinal. Tzitzis is, we said before, above. Tzitzis comes from the talus. It means that it's higher than reason, higher than rationale. As b'shas merechat sich nit mikein mididas v'hagbolas from tam vadas, when you do not take into consideration none of the limitations and none of the measures of reason and the rational humanis mekayim mitzvahs, the ma'ila metam vadas, and you fulfill the mitzvahs higher than reason and rationale. Dan firzim der Eibishter mitim oich l'maylam magbol sateva. So then the Eibishter deals with you also in a way beyond any of the limitations of nature. So you're saying it doesn't work. It works. The Eibishter helps you that it works. Das is ani Hashem l'keichem asher etzesias v'meres mitzrayim. And this is what he say, I am Hashem who's taking you out of Egypt. Was afile ein evet so ken narish game from Mitzrayim, even for one single slave to be able to go out of Egypt is kemaimer azal, as our sages tell, blessed memory tell us. Given umeglech hapiteva, this was impossible according to nature. Und doch sein narish sheish me yet 600 elef ragli, 600,000 are the people who are levad noshim betav. That's with the sides, the women and the little children. And they also, not only to go out, they came out with a tremendous fortune. Each Jew had no less. He had 90 donkeys and some getrogen kesef that were laden with silver and gold. And on top of that, the guy made a bravo. Also a mixture, big mixture went up with them. Which means, as afilu goyim again, even goyim recognized this is the Abish that took you out of Egypt. He dealt with you in such a supernatural way. But this is this is totally beyond nature. Das is when the Yid does not conduct himself according to the limitations of nature, and does the mitzvahs, the tzitzis as they come from the talus and the Maila Me'ateva, and he keeps all the mitzvahs, even though that it seems that the derech haTorah is not like the derech haTeva. Still, he goes by the derech haTorah, and he doesn't go by the limitations of nature. Dan is aniya bayin likeichen asher eitzesi eschem eretz Mitzrayim. Then I am your God that is taking you out from the land of Egypt. As oich mil maila, and also from above is many mashpia the maila miderech hateva. He gets a flow beyond the ways of nature. The boni chayim zeina revicha, children, life, and the sustenance in a wide way. This is the Sichos Shabbos Parshas Shelach Tov Shin Yud.